Drivers from Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari or Mercedes are facing penalties going into the second half of the season. Now, as we know, teams are allowed a certain number of parts for their power units and will take a grid penalty for their drivers if they go above the allocated amount. This includes 4 internal combustion engines, 4 turbochargers, 4 MGU-Hs, 4 MGU-Ks, 2 energy stores, 2 control electronics and 8 exhausts. And the data which I'm about to show, which was published by Racing News 365, shows how Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren are currently looking. And I'd say Mercedes are looking the most comfortable. I mean, as you can see, both Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are currently under the amount of parts you're allowed to have for each component. So both drivers can go into the second half of the season with a range of fresh elements still at their disposal, and I think it looks like Mercedes could avoid taking a penalty unless something goes wrong. And that's good news for the team. I mean, while they started the season so poorly, they've won 3 of the last 4 races, and if they want to be in the top 3 in the constructors, taking a penalty could hinder the amount of points they could take to close the gap. So at the moment, I think things are looking good for Mercedes, but what's it like at Ferrari? As you can see, both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are at the limit for the energy store and control electronics, while Leclerc is also at the limit for the MGU-H. Now I think if Ferrari can make the energy store and control electronics last, I think Sainz could be okay for the rest of the season. I mean, it'd be close, but I think it's possible. But because Leclerc is also at the limit for the MGU-H, I get the feeling it's going to be a much closer call for the Monegasque, and personally I do feel he will be taking a penalty at some point. Now over at McLaren, Lando, Norris and Oscar Piastri are also at the limit for the control electronics and energy stores. Both drivers are not at the limit for any other part though, and I think if both Norris and Piastri can make the control electronics and energy stores last, they can maybe get to the end of the season without a penalty. Like with Ferrari, I think it will be a close call, especially when you consider that Norris changes control electronics and energy store back at the opening race in Bahrain, which could actually make a penalty more likely for him. But avoiding a penalty would be crucial for McLaren, given Red Bull are on the ropes at the moment and have lost so many points to McLaren. Now in regards to Red Bull, I think they're in the worst position. Both Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez have had to take some form of grid drop already this season, and looking at the stats, I wouldn't be surprised if another one comes. Forgetting the parts where both drivers are already over the limit, both are at the limit for the turbocharger, MGU-H and MGU-K, while Verstappen is also at the limit for the energy store and control electronics. Now if both drivers can continue to draw upon the components already in their allocations, they could be okay for the rest of the season. But personally, I think both drivers could be facing one more grid drop each. Now even though some teams look more comfortable than others and could maybe get to the end of the season without a penalty, you also have to remember that there's a performance advantage for new components, and if teams do choose to take penalties by going above the allocated amounts, I think they'll come in Monza, a track full of long straights and where I'd say it's easier to overtake. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.